Hello, and welcome. Good afternoon. Welcome to your session, your Q&A session on mental health and well-being today with Vitality. My name is Henri. I'm one of the Vitality coaches and a specialist in mental health and well-being. You're probably sick of the sight of me by now. It's Thursday. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. We've done loads of sessions. Still here, still going. So we've got a couple more sessions for you this week. I started working in this field about 10 years ago, started working with athletes and sports people on confidence, decision making, recovering after mistakes, that kind of thing. I've worked in social care. I've worked in all sorts of jobs, really. Did some lecturing. And then about 5 years ago, started to really deepen my understanding into psychology and started working with everyday people on everyday challenges. And that's what brings me here today. It's what brings me to Vitality. It's what brings me in front of you today as well. And I'm lovely to be joined by my colleague, Andrew, today. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself and let the people know what you're going to be doing today?
Hi, Henry. Hi, everyone. Some people may recognize you from earlier on in a workshop. So I'm Vitality Coach Andrew, a personal trainer, and I'm not a mental health expert. So this is all you. But what I am is someone that has been through some mental health problems myself, someone that can relate to issues and gone through a transformation, a U-turn, physically and mentally. We have got loads of questions come through, but if you do want to ask any other questions, fire them away, and then we'll do it anonymously, so you won't be popped up on here, and I'll ask Henri some questions. Are you good to go?
I think so. I think I'm ready. Yeah, go for it.
Right, so we'll go for question number one then. So this person says, how to slow down and not react with impatience or frustration. Acting in these ways can make us feel worse later too. So asking how to slow down and not to react to impatience or frustration.
So I think you did the reframing piece earlier, didn't you? Where I think this really relates to that. You know, we often react and respond quite quickly. So if you think about human beings, we get up in the morning, we live our day-to-day lives, and what happens is we encounter stimulus, we encounter different situations. Now, some of those situations perhaps provide a bit of frustration, or essentially what happens is things don't go the way that we plan them to go. So our expectation of reality doesn't quite meet reality. So either perhaps we spill a cup of coffee, or somebody kind of cuts us up driving or pushes into a queue, something like this. Something happens and we kind of have a bit of friction. There's a bit of friction there. Now, what we often do, that friction, where is that friction coming from, is the first thing that I would ask. That friction is coming from our beliefs and our expectations about life. What happens is we react very quickly, and either we say something, we do something, we act, with impatience perhaps, and then we're like, ooh, that maybe wasn't the best thing to say in that situation, and then we're kind of clawing back. We create some stress maybe that we didn't really need to create, and sometimes we have to go back sheepishly, with our tail between our legs and say sorry. So what I would say is the best way to avoid that is slowing down, knowing that you're going to have a reaction. This is the thing. You're going to have a reaction when things don't quite go to plan, when things happen that you're not expecting or that you don't like. There's going to be a feeling there. There's going to be a feeling. When we accept and we expect this feeling, we can just say, look, I don't have to act on this feeling. I don't have to act on this emotion. When we reframe the situation, we go, right, okay, what's going on here? What else is happening? What else is happening here? Can we find out some more of the facts of the situation? Now, if we find out some of the facts of the situation, we just slow down our reaction. We slow down our response. Now, we can continue to make that same response, or we can choose a different response. The example that we used earlier on today is, you hold the door open for somebody, you don't get a thank you. What's the reaction? Generally speaking, it's one of annoyance, frustration. I did something for you and you didn't say thank you. When we look at the facts of the situation are, if you're going to hold the door open for somebody, sometimes you're going to get a thank you and sometimes you're not going to get a thank you. When we accept and appreciate and accept that that is the truth, that is the fact of the situation, then you can choose whether to hold the door open or not. I will continue to hold the door open because it makes sense. It just doesn't make sense to me to shut the door in someone's face. A really good example of this, I remember being in a train station and there was clearly like a couple of tourists in London train station, right?
Yeah.
And they were on their phone because they didn't know where they were going. And the chap was holding the door open for them for ages, right? And they both walked through and I was walking towards the door as well. And they both walked through and they were on their phone. They weren't looking. And I could see it. And then he said, "Oh, thank you so much," and slammed the door then into my face, right? Exactly. So then but I could see it coming. I knew I could see it. And this is the thing, is that when you start to become more aware of these things, you start to see them in other people, right? And so I could see it a mile off. I could see it. And then as I was going, I knew he was going to do it. And then what I did is I made a real point of making sure he knew that he then slammed the door in my face, right? Because then he was like, "Oh gosh, oh, I'm sorry." And it's like,
he was so wrapped up in his moment that he was probably just completely
he was
saw red.
exactly. He saw red, and then he just slammed the door. It didn't hit me, but I made it look like it did. I was like, "Oh no." And he was just to, again,
Yeah.
I mean, I was being cheeky, wasn't I? So maybe I shouldn't have done it. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer, I'm afraid, to a pretty short question. So
I'm just going to jump ahead. There's a question here
yeah.
because we do get a lot of questions about how we deal with things ourselves. Now, this person is asking how to deal with other people. So, how can someone help if their partner is going through mental health issues themselves? So, how can they be supportive, I guess, and understand more?
So it's a really difficult situation to be in. It's a really challenging situation. So that's the first thing. Like it's not easy, and it's not going to be an easy ride, so that's one thing to consider, is that it's never easy when you're supporting somebody, when somebody, a loved one, family member, friend, is going through this. So be kind to yourself. Like, you're not going to get it right all the time, but what I would just encourage is just to support and just be there and be loving and be as empathetic as possible. Try to be as patient as possible as well, because imagine what it's like for that other person. If it's hard for you, like, imagine what it must be like in your partner's position or in that other person's position, because it's like 10 times, if not 100 times harder for them. Another thing that I would say is ask them and speak to them about what support they want. Don't just assume that they want you to be there all the time, or don't just assume that they want you to do certain things. Ask them, how can I best support you? What do you want from me? And give them that support that they need. And the communication is going to be hugely important, and getting that right. So like brilliant. Like, if you can, it's great that you're asking that question, because it is a really tricky situation. But good luck, and I hope all the best for it, for sure.
And something that I can relate to as well with that is, I've actually asked the other person that when you have these episodes, what do you want me to do? And the other person just says, let me have my 5 minutes, I'll be on my own, then I'll come to you when I'm ready. I think
Absolutely.
when I was trying to say, are you okay, trying to smother the person, I was actually making it worse. So
Yes.
communication is key. And I'm so glad that I do it, because I can recognize the signs now, and I just let them be.
Well, it comes back to that question we had before, doesn't it? It's like, how, when we're reacting, and it's so natural and normal for us to want to go and approach the situation and try to help, but sometimes that can be the very worst thing, that person, that definitely doesn't want that. What I actually want is for you just to leave me alone and like let me manage it myself, and then I just need to deal with it myself. So it's going to be different for different people. So
Yeah.
it's really important that you do, communicate and ask what do they want and what do they need, and just try and give them that. Yeah, lovely.
Great question. I really like that one.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's grab another one. So this person's saying, coping with stress while being at home with others almost all day, every day. So basically,
Mhm.
working from home and living at home. The same, yeah.
And it sounds like the stress is coming from other people in the house potentially. So one of the things I think that people forget is home working in a shared house environment. And I live in London, live in a shared house. Lots of people live with shared, not with their partners, not in their relationships, but in shared homes. And this can be really a challenge because it's friends, it's kind of flatmates, it's tricky. It's a real tricky one. So what I would say is, again, reframing, really helpful. This is, okay, how can we see this from the other point of view? Can we slow down? Can we try and observe our reactions and our responses? Now, if you were on the mindfulness session earlier, mindfulness is a really particularly helpful thing to do, because what it does is it highlights our thoughts and our feelings. It highlights those. Now, the more that we can highlight our thoughts and feelings, the more that we can spot them when they arise. Now, you might get a feeling of frustration because of XYZ reason. What I would say is that are you going to be thinking about that in a year's time? Is this something that you're going to be thinking about in even a week's time? If the answer is no, then let it go. I was a poet and I didn't know it. But if the answer is no, let it go. It's that not sweating the small stuff. And certainly, like, this year has been such an upheaval for so many people, and we're just kind of getting towards the end of it now. Hopefully, fingers crossed. You've been doing really, really well this whole time. If you can be a bit more, just try and hold on and be a bit patient, and just be a bit kinder to yourself, and maybe kinder to the people that are living with you and are the causes of your stress, then this would be the best thing, because we're right at the finish line now.
Yeah.
We're nearly there. We're nearly there. You've got through the hardest bit. So yeah, be kind to yourself and be kind to the other people that you're with as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds good. Great answer.
Thanks.
Okay, so Lou, move to the next one. So, this is a good one. I like this one. Okay, so how to break away from the habit of picking up your phone rather than doing something for you, something you like baking, drawing, reading, etc. So, yes, this is a good one. I like this one.
Phones are amazing, aren't they? They are just amazing. Like, we are always on these things. Okay, so if I had, do you remember Room 101, Andrew?
Yes.
What was Room 101? Just for anyone who doesn't remember what Room 101 is.
Isn't that something that if you could you could either save or get rid of one thing?
Just get rid of it. You lock it in Room 101 forever, and you never see it ever again. Yeah, mobile phones would be my thing that I would put in
Was
Room
it?
101. Yeah.
Is
So
it?
they're amazing. They're amazing things, and we're more connected as human beings. We're more connected than ever, which is fabulous. If you were to go onto your phone now and go into settings, and there is something called screen time. Now go into screen time and have a look at what your daily average screen time is. Okay,
Okay.
that is a monstrous amount of time that you're spending on your phone. I can tell you right now, for most people, it is going to be a monstrous amount of time. So there's a couple of different things that you can do just to stop that, to avoid that. They're going to sound extreme to some people. Extreme version, what do you reckon? Extreme thing is,
Limit your time. Get like social media time.
think more extreme.
Just come off social media.
Oh, well, just from the device,
Oh, go for it. Go on.
Turn it off. Just turn it off.
Oh,
Turn it off. Doesn't sound as extreme, right? Turn it off. Put it in a drawer. Done.
Easier said than done. Some people might have that as a lifeline, that they need to be reachable. So that could be quite tough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the extreme I'm talking about, right? So
Mm.
there's a few things you can do. You can turn it off, you can put it away. People who and bear with me with this one, because turn it off, put it away, come back to it in a couple of hours and see how many really important people have called you. See how many people, really important messages. Exactly. Another thing is notifications. Turn notifications off, especially on social media, because I mean, I just heard a notification there. Do you know what I mean? So then you're like, oh, okay, what was that? Who's trying to reach me? And what happens is they've done quite a bit of research on this now. So it's about addiction, right? Now, if you they looked at gamblers' addiction. Now, when you look at gamblers' addiction and you look at the chemical release, the endorphin release, no, the dopamine release, okay? So if you think about like a poker game and you've dealt in, and they looked at the dopamine release, and the dopamine release occurs on the turnover of the card,
Okay.
whether they win or not.
So when you get that notification,
You're getting that dopamine release. You're like, oh, okay, what's that?
that instant like
Whether it's something interesting or not. Do you know what I mean? It becomes programmed into our system, like association. We program that association in, and that notification is something which is interesting. It's something that's going to take us away from this moment that we're in. So turning off notifications is really good from social media.
Yeah.
Turning it off from text messages, WhatsApp, that kind of thing. Get to your, remember when we used to have house phones?
Yeah.
Like, we were doing stuff. We were out doing stuff. And then the phone might ring and it would be like, oh, the phone's ringing. Oh, who's going to get, like, do you know what I mean? It was exciting.
I will agree with the whole notifications now. That has completely changed me. So it's so nice. I don't get these things come time. So I do that. That is good.
There
And
is,
I have I have time on my phone so that when my partner comes home, I'm not on my phone. I try and spend as much time face to face with my dogs, with my partner, because I'm looking at a screen all day. I don't want to look at a screen when I could be having valuable time with loved ones. So
there are limits you can put as well. There are limits you can put on your phone. It's something that I've explored a little bit. So there are screen limits. So they kind of turn it off. You can still access it if you need to, if you want to. There's also an app that I got, which was called, oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called. But basically, it locks your phone. And if you set a time limit. So if you lock it for an hour, you get like a little tree grow, right?
oh god,
And it's like a gamification way of basically ignoring your phone. And if you do a certain number of focus minutes, they actually plant real trees. So let me find it for you. It's great. It's great.
Now you're being distracted.
I know I'm being distracted.
Yeah, while we're doing this, I might leave you next question.
It's called Forest. Yeah, check it out. But there's lots of different things you can do. Yeah. Find what works for you. This is the most important thing. But certainly your relationship with that device is very important. And the relationship if you're a parent as well, the relationship that you have with that device is going to be picked up by your kids. So that's really, really important.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. This next question,
Mm-hmm.
don't quite get it myself, so I'll be interested in this one.
Okay.
The question is rechecking OCD a mental illness, and why do they occur?
So OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is classed as a mental health condition. Essentially, what it is an anxiety disorder. When you look at the essence, the root of all anxiety disorders is racing thinking, lots of thinking. Generally speaking, lots of thinking about the future, and generally speaking, lots of catastrophizing, thinking about what's going to go wrong. And again, generally speaking, about things that are very much out of control. Everything in the future is out of control, right? You can't control anything. What happens is that can sometimes manifest itself in different ways, and OCD is one way that it can manifest itself. And what that is an obsessive behavior either physical behavior or even cognitive behavior. So if you think about thinking, overthinking might be that same thing. So that it's an obsessive thinking about a certain thing, obsessive planning about a certain situation. How it manifests physically can be in cleaning, lots of cleaning, and it can be in all sorts of things, really. Like I've heard of having to make, for example, 20 cups of tea and then drinking the 21st one. Essentially what happens is with all of that thinking, what happens is that we create beliefs around what we can control in this moment and how that will affect the future. And so what some people, yeah, I don't know if you've had that, when you see a magpie and then it's like, if you don't see another magpie, it's bad luck.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
superstitious, but I
no.
do agree that yes.
So one case I've heard of would be somebody who believed that so strongly that they would, when they saw a magpie, they would have to see another magpie, and if they didn't see another magpie, it would have such an impact on their daily living, because they would then have to drive around until they saw another magpie, because otherwise something terrible might happen. Then we get into that catastrophic thinking. Same with boiling the kettle, for example, 10 times, making the cup of tea. If I drink the 19th cup of tea, I don't know if something bad might happen. But every time I've drunk the 21st cup of tea, life has been okay. So what happens is this association is created by this behavior with the impact that has on the future.
Okay.
Now, of course, we can see that is a bit of quite a distortion on reality. It's quite a distortion on reality. But lots of people, we pick up beliefs along the way, as human beings, all the time, like all the time.
Yeah.
And some of them are really simple, small ones that don't have a massive effect on our day-to-day behavior. When we look at anxiety disorders, and particularly OCD, we start to get beliefs that are actually, maybe you can see, if you can see how they're the root of them, but there's no real basis of that in reality. And so, but that doesn't mean that for that person it's not true. For that person it's true. Like I can't drink that 16th cup of tea, otherwise something terrible is going to happen.
Okay.
So it's exactly the same as, and what I would say is, when we look at beliefs, human beings used to believe the world was flat. There was no other option. So what they had was, ships would have something called a crow's nest, and in the crow's nest would be a person, and their job would be to look out onto the horizon
Yeah.
and look out to the edge of the earth, right?
Okay.
And so going out to sea was like considered the most dangerous thing you could do, because you might fall off the edge of the earth. Now we know that was completely untrue, and yet when you were of that time, it would be completely true. And
Because
so
beliefs are pretty much learnt from other people, aren't they? Like the fear of spiders is obviously, it's normally learnt from a child, because the adult is afraid of spiders. I've seen kids play with spiders, and there's nothing wrong with it. But when they are believed to be, when they're learnt, beliefs are learnt, I guess.
yes,
Because they're frightening.
yes.
That's how. Okay, I get
So
that.
beliefs can come from a few different places. They come from our socialization, absolutely. So there'll be beliefs that we've picked up along the way, and this is why very much so we're starting to see more awareness around our unconscious biases, around gender, around race and diversity and inclusion, all of that stuff, because we're a product of the society that we grow up in. And so our beliefs and the way that we navigate the world is a product of that. The same is true for our beliefs around all sorts of things, about protein shakes, about nutrition, about exercise, about mental health. When we think, we can create these beliefs for ourselves, and this is where it becomes a challenge. Is we start to create these beliefs that have a real impact on our day-to-day living. A really easy example would be, or a simple example would be, being on time. Right. So I used to teach English, and we had like a 10-minute rule. And if you weren't in class 10 minutes after the lesson, you weren't allowed in. Right. And I was always very much like, my parents were always very much like, you've got to be early for appointments, and don't be late. It's really, really important. And so for me, growing up, I was like, being on time is so important. And then I spoke to a friend of mine. Was like, I was running late for a meeting, and I was like getting stressed. I was getting caught up. I was like texting him, "Oh, I'm going to be late. I'm really, really sorry." And we were literally just meeting up for like a coffee. And I was driving, and I was, every red light got to, I was like, oh no. And I was really stressed, and I ran down, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm late. I was like 15 minutes late. And he's like, you're not late. And I was like, yeah, I'm 15 minutes late. I'm so sorry. And he's like, oh no, that's all right. Like, I used to work in sales, and you'd be like easily half an hour late going in London. But it wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing. And it didn't bother him. And I realize, and I reflect, and I go, well, actually, it doesn't, like, things happen. Like, sometimes people are late. Like, it's not a huge deal. It doesn't matter that much. I bigged it up to be this thing, which actually, it's not that important.
Cool.
Not to me anymore, anyway. I mean, obviously, it's helpful and it's useful for things like this, but it's not the end of the world. It's absolutely not the end of the world.
Cool. I'm very aware of the time.
Yeah, I know. I've been rabbiting on. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
My fault.
I'm going to pick out another quick question
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Okay, this is a good one. Okay, how can you be positive when you have major health issues going on? I take it with themselves, I think, or with other people, maybe.
Yeah. So there's a tendency to think that we should be positive all the time. We get a lot of messages, again, saying it's really important to be positive. Look on the bright side. Always be happy. It's important to always be happy, always be energetic, be confident, and all this kind of stuff. Now, I don't know about you, Andrew, but that isn't my experience of life on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes I'm feeling good, sometimes I don't feel so good. And what I try to tell people, or try to encourage people, is to feel the way that you're feeling. Like, feel all of your feelings. If you feel bad, then that's okay. If you feel good, that's okay. Feelings, like, are temporary. They come and they go. Sometimes we feel good, sometimes we don't feel so good. So if you've got a health challenge that you're facing, what I would say is that, and I kind of mentioned this in the mindfulness session earlier, is the fact that we're even here, the fact that we're having this conversation, is just an absolute miracle. We've evolved from matter over billions of years to get to the point where we're having a conversation, like, remotely on this platform here, which is unbelievable. When we look at what we have in our lives that we can be grateful for, there is so much to be grateful for. And focusing on that rather than the challenges that we have. And I don't want to downplay the challenges that this person's having. That's not my intention whatsoever. But there are 7 billion people on the planet, and at least 1 billion would swap places with you in a heartbeat, like in an absolute heartbeat. It's really common for us to focus on the things that are holding us back, and much less common for us to focus on the things that we're really lucky to have and that we can be grateful of. So that's what I would say in this situation. And I don't want to downplay this physical condition whatsoever, but there is beautiful things. There are beautiful things in your life that you can focus your attention on.
Embrace it. Yeah. Embrace
Absolutely.
the things that you have. Yeah.
100%.
Definitely. I strongly agree with that. Definitely.
100%. Thank you.
Fantastic. Do you know what, Henry? We could go on for another
Gonna
hour.
have to call it a day. I know, we're gonna have to call it a day.
But thank you for everyone that's written in. Thank you for listening as well. And Henry, you've been fantastic. So I've just been the person asking the questions, but you're the guy with the answers. So thank you very much, Henry.
Thank you, Andrew. And for everybody watching, please do join us tomorrow. Yeah, that's our session. Tomorrow is our last day, Mental Health Awareness Week. We have a mindful walk at 12:30, and then the big interview with Johnny Wilkinson himself, England legend, sporting legend. I cannot wait for that. That is going to be absolutely amazing. So please do join us for that. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Henri.
Thank you, everybody, for your questions, and thank you for everyone who watched. Let's take care, and I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.